Talking about this movie, I understand that this was a very different research process for you because it was a long time coming and you were researching the part not only as an actor, but also as a producer. In that sense, what stood out for you about her story, and how did you work through choosing what to show and what not to show in the movie?
Well, I mean, it's honestly, it's such a fantastic question because I could talk forever about this part of putting the film together. So, honestly, in the early stages of the development of the script, it really took a very long time to decide what to leave out because Lee Miller, she lived so much life. She lived so many lives. She kept reinventing herself even after the war. Again, she trained to be a chef and she had a whole other career. I mean, she was an unbelievable, extraordinary woman who just kept going. She was very, very restless. And she talked about that a lot. She would describe her restlessness. She would say, oh, if, I could settle down if it weren't for my damn itchy bottom. That was what she would say, how she would describe her restless quality. But I think once we realized that the script was originally just too long because we were trying to put so much in, and actually it was clear that we weren't able to give full attention to the really important decade of her life, which was the decade, of course, before, during, and immediately after the war. Then it became clear, okay, we have to show a little glimpse into her life when she met Roland, and that sort of pre-war hedonistic time when no one believed it was going to happen. And that was enough. That was all that was important. We didn't want to focus on Man Ray. We didn't want to focus on Picasso and the men. We wanted to dive right into Lee as a middle-aged woman who went to war and who fought for the right to go. And once we had decided on that, then things started to come to life. The last piece of the puzzle actually to go in was that conversation that she has with Anthony, that sort of flash forward conversation with the journalist. That was something that Liz Hannah, our co-writer, she brought in that piece of the story. And actually, once that fell into place, I suddenly felt, okay, now it isn't a biopic anymore. It's a film that covers a decade of life, and I felt that we could really embrace the truth of who Lee was so much more once we had distilled that down. But I spent 7 years in that archive. I was just there all the time. So I know every part of it, and I had the kind of access that no one has ever really been given before. And it was so valuable. I couldn't have done it without that. And my friendship with Tony Penrose, of course.
Yeah. Now, you're working with people on this film that you have worked before, from Ellen Kuras, the director, to Ivana Primorac, who has worked with you on The Reader. How did you choose that group?
Well, as you go through, it's like anything. As you go through life, you find your people. You have your people in your life who you always check in with, who you share creative ideas with, and who you really trust. And I had been talking to Ivana about Lee Miller since 2015 when I started working on it. And then Ellen started directing television maybe 5 years ago. And it was around 2019, 2020 that I started to realize, oh my gosh, Ellen really, she should direct this film. I've known her since 2003. And it just started to make sense to have a woman and not a man. We also had Gemma Jackson, who is our set designer. I've known her since I was 25 when I did Iris with her. I mean, just extraordinary woman. And you just form those friendships with people. And when you work in independent film like that, you all know what it takes to get it done. It's totally different to working with a studio. With a studio, you have this cushion, you have this infrastructure, you have this room full of protectors. But actually with independent film, you have a room that is only going to be full of the people you want to be in that room. And so it was such a privilege to be able to just pull on those great people, the kindest, the most fun, the most willing, the most trusting. And I was just so lucky that they all said yes. And it was an amazing experience to be surrounded by all of those wonderful people.
Now, the wonderful people also stands to the cast, because you're working with actors, amazing actors, but something for me really stuck because it's the first time that you get to share scenes with Marion Cotillard, because you did a movie with her and you didn't share any scenes. And I remember she presented you with your Oscar. So there's, you've known her for a while now.
Yes, and amazing to actually be with her. I mean, to be in a creative space with her and to have those conversations. She's very playful. You know, French actors, they are very, very playful, and they have a real sense of fun. They have a real sense of spontaneity, and they just do it. You know, and they have big hearts and they have big personalities. And of course, that was exactly what we needed for this film. And working with Marion was just extraordinary. I mean, looking into her eyes, it's like looking through it's almost like looking through liquid glass. It's like she has a light bulb inside her head that's just shining out of her face. She's a wonderful person, and I'm just so grateful to her that she did this for me. It's just incredible.
Now, many of the images used in the film were taken by you, if I'm not wrong. Has the movie changed your relationship to photography? Do you take photos now? Did you take them?
I do take photos now, yes. I mean,
Mm.
I've never been much of a photographer myself before. My husband is a very good photographer, and actually both of my two older children are also really extraordinary photographers. And so as a mother, when your children have a passion, you don't do it. You let them. So I always was letting that be their thing. And so with the Rolleiflex, you know, when I started to become like, actually I could do it quite well, I almost felt like, oh, I mustn't show the kids because I don't want them to feel like I'm now like treading on their toes because they're so good. So I would be like, oh, I'd be really quietly pleased with my images that I took. And actually, I didn't really tell them that I was really taking the photographs in the film until they saw the film. And I said, I took all those pictures. And they were like, what? I just hadn't really told them. I was just, because it was just part of playing the character. I was just doing it because I had learned, you know, I'd really learned it. And I was the only one who could work that camera. So I was very protective of the camera as well. And I was the only one who could change the film. And so, yeah, it was just part of the work. So I just didn't really tell them until afterwards. But yes, they were thankfully, they were very proud as well that I had done that. So yeah, and I do have a completely different, I have a different eye for photography now. I mean, and in particular, other people's photographs. I can really, you know, I know how they would have captured that image, or I know, you know, the kind of light they would have used, or the development process they would have put it through. So I've learned so much. Yeah.